welcome to this interview series ahead of Big Data and AI World on the 6th and 7th of March at Excel London. I'm Rebecca Uffindale, tech reporter at Camaraderie, and today my guest is Niklas Ek, Group Head of Data, Insights and Analytics at PureGym Group. Niklas will appear at Big Data and AI World in March, but today we're going back in time to talk about 3 significant years in Niklas's life that have shaped their life and career. So thank you very much, Niklas, for being on this call with me today. It's very nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And so what was your first year of significance that you'd like to share?
First year takes me all the way back to 2011. So just fresh out of school, I actually joined the Swedish Armed Forces. It wasn't not a compulsory service, but something I really wanted to do. I have some family who's served the armed forces, and I wanted to really challenge myself. And I think it's a year where I learned a lot about myself and how I work with other people. So I served at the Command and Control Regiment, where you sit at the intersection of technology and the operational side. You end up doing a lot of problem solving in what can be quite stressful and as I say, maybe adverse conditions at times. And an experience like that takes you very quickly out of the school bench and straight into a much more high pressure situation. You start getting challenged physically, mentally, and you really have to start performing in a way and together with people in a way that you don't do in school and a kind of controlled school environment. So that kind of situation teaches you a lot about yourself. I think what it also taught me looking back was a lot about leadership. And there's a lot of very strong leaders in that type of environment that show how you can lead by setting clear objectives, where you set an objective and you empower a team to deliver against it. So you actually create these motivated teams. And we do the same thing as leaders in business. When we do well is we're clear on the objectives with teams, we make sure they're enabled, they have the right people in them, but giving the objective rather than the task lets people then actually be agile, be responsive, and find the best way towards it. That goes anywhere from trying to set up communications equipment in northern Sweden through to trying to reduce customer churn. Often you start with that objective and you drive towards it. And I think those are the things that even to this day stuck with me from that year.
How has your experience in the armed forces shaped your approach to teamwork and collaboration in the setting outside of the military?
It's going back and realizing that having a team, giving the outcome more than the activity, and listening to the team of how they want to achieve that outcome, as something that both in the military as well, but also that's something I've taken with me throughout my career, trying to emulate, and that's how I try to lead today as well.
How is it that your approach to kind of prioritizing and managing your time effectively? What kind of strategies did you employ during this time, and how is it perhaps different now?
Yeah, I think the pressure to deliver never goes away, and the stakes are different, if nothing else. One of the things I've taken with me is realizing that people act and I act different under pressure, to make sure I have a little bit of distance to myself and sometimes knee-jerk reactions that come through under pressure. And knowing that I need that retrospection, as I need to pause and ask myself, is what I'm planning to do the right thing? Or am I just doing it because I'm feeling the need to, deliver short-termist and not being strategic because the pressure is on. So having that self-insight is something that's stuck with me.
I saw when you submitted your years, you had a regimental motto. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, it's nihil impossibilis est, so nothing is impossible. But it is, maybe a euphemism in some situations. There are elements where you're a realist, but I think the default optimism that implies that nothing's impossible if you really, really apply yourself to it and really prioritize it. It's definitely something that's stuck with me. I'm trying to think about things in terms of what I'm choosing to make happen rather than what is possible by prioritizing, but dedicating time, dedicating effort.
It seems you have a very kind of methodical approach.
Yeah, and I think you have to think about in terms of the inverse as well. The fact that nothing is impossible doesn't mean that everything is always possible. So it's about that trade-off and prioritization of choosing the things you want to make happen, investing in them, and being willing to forego other things and deprioritize other things in exchange for them.
And let's move on to your second year. What was the year that you would like to share?
I wanted to share a year at university. So 2014, my last year at university, I started playing American football, which came from I'd never touched an American football in my life. I think before I went to the first training session, I was kind of, I'd argue, probably coerced into doing it initially. Found it really fun. So I went from, frankly, reasonably short time, about getting into a game, starting learning something, starting to work. I really enjoyed the teamwork environment of it, and culminated actually playing in the Cambridge Oxford varsity game for Cambridge in American football, less than 12 months after learning the sport. And that was, I think, that work together and playing a sport, playing as part of a game with so much legacy as well, and a sporting rivalry with that legacy, that still stuck with me today as an incredible opportunity to work together and do a team sport.
What was the one kind of nugget of something that was in there that you felt, this is something that I really enjoy? You said about the teamwork aspect. Is that the strategy behind the teamwork, or is it more so just the camaraderie of it?
Well, I think coerce, as in they practiced, and I was frankly a little bit embarrassed to turn them down too many times. That was the reason I went in. But so that got me into it all. What got me stuck was the way you play my football. It's heavily reliant on the sum being, the total being the greater than the sum of the parts. So in every what's called place, every individual thing you try to pull off, you do one thing, but you rely on your teammates to do other things as well as responding to what the opposition's trying to do. So you're trying to keep your head in a swivel, but also when it comes together, it's often the trust you have and the fact that your teammates deliver their part, you deliver your part. You have managed to pull off some really, really cool and interesting things by all working together and each of you delivering their part.
Well, you mentioned in your responses that you sent to me, very, very kind, thank you so much, by the way, that American football may be less interesting for those who are watching, but what aspects of the game really engage you?
The engaging thing is fundamentally your teammates, is the people you go down with, and the fact that you spend 3+ hours on the pitch playing a game, which is what makes it for a fun afternoon, but probably a less enjoyable watch for some people. It's not the fastest paced game to watch. But I can promise you, when you're out there and you're tackling, you're running, you're doing all those things, the time flies a lot faster, especially doing it with friends. And that physical bit plus the friends and teammates you have alongside you, that really was the thing that made me stick with it. And I'll admit, even I sometimes struggle and find the game quite boring to watch. But that's the nature of very, very different to being on the pitch versus sat on the sofa watching a game.
I wonder, do you have a highlight reel of all your top sporting moments? Could you share with us one or two of them that you really stuck in your mind as being, this is going to follow me the rest of my life?
I think there's one moment, and then there's one too, but there's one type play that I've always really enjoyed, because I played on the line. So that's not American football. So you have you're trying to either protect or you're trying to break through a line of people playing another line of people. And we had one play where one person would step away and kind of abandon their position, and you'd have someone else come in and fill it to allow the person who runs away to appear somewhere else on the pitch. And that always you could pop up when no one would least expect it, and always trusting your teammate to fill the position and or filling someone else's position. And you did these little fake plays where you surprised them and came out of nowhere. Those were always my most fun plays.
So I can imagine leaving that position, that kind of guarded, safe position, in order to give someone else a chance. It takes quite a lot of trust, as you said, from your teammates. But how do you kind of promote this level of trust within your teams now? How has what you've learned playing American football informed how you manage teams or interact with colleagues in your organisation?
The things that stuck with me there, something in many places, it takes time to build that trust. You have to come in, you have to get to know people, you have to build up a certain level of social contracts, a level of rapport and experience with people to have that trust. And that's something that today I've allowed myself and my teams always the time to build these, for us to build relationships, build the experience of having done these things in practice or in real world scenarios, where you can then start to build to that higher level of trust. It doesn't come overnight. It doesn't switch on and off from one experience to another. It's something that builds up incrementally over time. So what I try and do with teams, always make sure I create enough environments, circumstances, opportunities for that to slowly build up, and expect it to appear over time rather than off the bat on day one, because that's just not possible and that's not fair on anyone to expect.
And so let's move on to your final year. What year have you selected?
Well, I picked 2022, which was my first year joining PureGym, which was a incredible change and an incredibly interesting change in my professional career. Of coming in, having spent a lot of time before that in the professional services space, getting the opportunity to come into a company like PureGym with such an incredible wealth of data, and also sat at a really interesting intersection between, it's a subscription service, we're an e-commerce business in terms of how we sell it, but we produce a physical product where we go in and we actually bring health and well-being to people. So there's this positive physical outcomes when we can provide our product. If people go into the gym, they're happier, they're healthier. And being able to combine my experience in data, some of my interest in sport and fitness with that together, that was an incredibly interesting opportunity coming into, and an incredible learning. It's a bit of a shock and a learning opportunity once I started really get stuck into it. Because one of the things I learned that year more than any year is that in data, there's so much that's possible, especially in a bigger business, that as a leader or function, you end up setting the agenda and driving it a lot yourself, which is not something I'd always had as much experience of. Like coming in was one of the times I could take a team really step forward and set that data, that analytics, that AI agenda myself. And some of the things we did off the back of that in terms of helping people get into the gym and build a gym habit, probably some of the most rewarding projects I've worked on in my entire career.
Could you share a little bit of the intricacies behind that? Like, what was something that you contributed to a project that had a big payoff from your time there?
I mean, a lot of the credit belongs to my team much more than me, but one of the, I guess, two projects that really stuck with me and hopefully have a chance to talk about at the conference as well is one is around probably did a prompting people, just simple little nudges and reminders around coming back to the gym and using data to figure out when is a good time to remind someone. Because we all, at least I know, there's been many times in my life I've kind of fallen off the wagon, and just a little reminder, a bit of a helpful content, helpful tips and tricks to get back in the gym can actually have a real difference on people's ability to get back on the journey, back on the fitness journey. So using data together with our CRM team and bring the right kind of content to people at the right time has been a really good program we've been running to help get people back in the gym and build up loyalty again. So that's one of the really interesting data-driven projects we've done. Another one which we did together with the British Heart Foundation, who are a long-standing partner of PureGym, has been really interesting. Actually, one of the early projects I worked on was building called a Healthy Hearts program together with them. It's a really interesting, nice program helping people who are conscious about their heart health. We should all be more to figure out what are exercise regimes that they can access, what are recipes they can cook. So we're actually putting recipes in our app, as well as certain content that was helpful for people. And last I checked, that program now has reached 175,000 people, which is an incredible reach. And being able to shape that, we use some data to design how we actually get the content in front of people. And having now gotten that to almost 200,000 people, that's just an incredible amount of impact to have had and use data to shape.
And especially for such a worthy cause of it as well. How proud you must feel to have such a reach and something that really truly does matter and will affect people's lives. Has that always been something that you'd chosen, that you want to put your energies behind a good cause, or do you find ways of finding that kind of nugget of interest or goodness in anything that you put your mind to?
I think there's a lot of interest, but I think one of the reasons I really enjoy the work we do at PureGym, and I've worked in the past for some pro bono advisory firms as well, is putting data to good use. Data is so powerful, and unfortunately you can do a lot of harm with it, and you can use in a lot of ways that range from very, very noble to probably slightly less noble. And I've always wanted to sit on the more, producing positives, or they come as positive externalities to what I do. So being able to do that, PureGym, being able to use in a commercial setting, but still with a really positive impact on people, it's been something I've always picked up in various projects and roles throughout my career.
Great. And so, as being in data now and having such a hand in it, can you identify some of the common challenges or obstacles that organizations face when leveraging data or analytics, especially for social impact?
I think there's a lot of there's a lot of difficult challenges in it. I think especially in the world where I operate, is going from diagnostic to behavioral change is one of the biggest challenges that all fields face, of taking, understanding what is driving certain outcomes, and come a long way, and there's still further to go in terms of using data to identify what are precursors of adverse health outcomes or other problems, but actually taking that and then changing people's behavior, which is very, very hard. If it was easy, we'd all go to the gym and eat healthy and have live life as prescribed and as advised to us, but it's very hard to change behavior. It's very hard to fight instant gratification and general frictions around. So a lot of people, including who work with data, try and take that step. So, okay, well, how do we help people change their behavior? That's the really hard bit, and that's something we work on, a lot of other people working on. But applying the smartest brain, hopefully some of the smartest brains, some of the data science that's out there, some of the AI that's out there, the more that we can apply to helping people build the habits they want, I think that's the thing that's going to take the field even further forward.
That's such a great way of putting it, using data and AI to build good habits. And so, speaking about this, have you got anything that you want to build for this year in 2024? What good habits do you want to adopt this year?
Well, I think a lot of positive ones, but one of the things I'm trying to do more this year is mindfulness. It's an incredibly powerful practice, and I've had, since my life, I've been better at it and worse at it. I realized probably fell out of the habit tail end of last year, so that's one of the habits I'm trying to reintroduce back into my life. Partially also trying to be data driven and grounded in research. I try and look for habits that follow system of being able to set them up very clearly with context cues and have information, so having something that when it happens, so in my case kind of finishing work, trying to then have that as a cue to do some mindfulness, starting to work. But it's a very hard habit to build, but anything, I think a lot of research backs up, which you can do in the same context in the same way every day. It's not easier to build a habit than things that are more dispersed and harder to understand when they happen and where.
Being in the military, being on the American football team, then taking up your role here at PureGym, what are some top traits that you've noticed amongst those who are successful in those teams?
There's a very wide variety of people who've been successful in those teams. I don't think there is a single unifying trend. I think there are probably some indicators. A general level of self-insight and humility can be quite helpful. I think one of the things I saw throughout my time in the army and university, being able to accept failure and learn from it and evolve and drive. I think that, and I've also talked about in terms of growth mindset, that's incredibly helpful for people who succeed in the long term. And I think also, as I think about people who want to problem solve and read across into data, well, I've seen the people who want to find out why things work, how things work, and how they can impact them. So that level of intellectual curiosity, that's, I think, serve people really well in many domains, because it's natural problem solving instinct, and that often then therefore leaves the problems getting solved.
Great. And before your session at a big data and AI world, is there anything you'd like to share or anything you want to say to our audience?
Come along and listen to, if you want to hear us talk about this habit change, habit formation. We're not going to talk about a huge amount of the biggest and greatest in data science, but actually what I want to do, and I'm bringing a colleague with me from the CRM side, is talk about how we're actually changing behavior, because that changed behavior then actually results in positive health outcomes, positive business outcomes. If you find that bit interesting, come along and give us a listen.